there is, after the Prophet Muhammad died, or Muhammad died, he's no prophet to me, but when he died, there is a whole wars that Abu Bakr and Ali
really
waged. It's called the wars of the Murtad wars, or the apostate wars, where Abu Bakr and Ali actually burned alive people that were accused of apostasy. So ISIS didn't invent this. This was done in Islam
just to say
under an Islamic state.
We have these difficult traditions, actually, talking about killing apostates. Others saying, no, it's fine, people who became Christians from Islam, became Jews, etc., and who were left alone. The apostate wars were also political wars because it was rebellion as well. So there's an early discussion as to whether it was about apostasy or whether it was about political rebellion against United Arabia. Muslims have to grapple with these difficult issues. These are difficult issues in our tradition. The Ottomans repealed the apostasy laws in mid-19th century, 150 years ago. Al-Azhar in Egypt repealed, killing apostates 50, 60 years ago. And many Muslims don't know that. Many fundamentalist Muslims, literalists, want to bring that back, and they're doing it right now in Syria and Iraq and Saudi Arabia and other places. But Muslims have to have an honest discussion with their tradition. And of course you can be educated and still be Muslim and a devout Muslim.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
You want me to...
Here's the question you didn't answer.
I don't want to condemn people for ideas.
When all Sharia conditions apply in a perfect Sharia state, should apostasy be a criminal offence?
And I said that I reject the translation apostasy. It's inaccurate. Irtidad is translated as sedition and treason. Do you want me to repeat it again a third time and a fourth time? Do I not fit the stereotype of the ranting Muslim?
This is the problem when they politicise the faith.
Here's the thing. Of course.
When a messenger of God completes his prophetic mission, and the message is delivered most clearly and convincingly, and yet there are some people who insist that they are not going to believe and they go on to oppose. The Quran tells us that there is a law, there is a policy, there is a sunnat of the Almighty, that all messengers, their nations who rejected them, were met with God's punishment either through one natural calamity or another, or through the swords of the companions. There was therefore this statement as well, which was an extension of the same law, that if somebody during the lifetime of the Prophet apparently believed to save his or her skin and then disbelieved, then the same law would apply. This was an expectation which was mentioned at a time, as I said earlier, when the message had been communicated most convincingly and the deadline had come for those who rejected to be punished. And this was one of these stipulations, which was not meant to be generalized. But people, because they take hadith as an independent source of Islamic learning, they've generalized it, and you can see it in their behavior. I have been sent to fight them until they say La ilaha illallah. That is, there is another hadith which people mention, more particularly those who are militants, that the Prophet, may God have mercy be on him, said, I have come to ensure that this message dominates over all others, and I'll keep fighting them. This again was based on the same law that has been mentioned in the Quran, which was meant to be applicable to the Arabian Peninsula, to the nation who received this message from the messenger directly. Now obviously whatever was mentioned was stated by the Prophet, and it was taken and transmitted to the later generations, and when it was taken without any context, then obviously it had its consequences, which we are still facing and going through. Now in the Quran there is a law that has been mentioned over and over again. Honestly, if you ask me what is the most predominant theme in the Quran, or one of the most predominant themes, it's going to be the one that I'm now going to describe, which you find everywhere in the Quran. And that theme is the description of the Almighty's law of Risala. Okay, you can describe it differently in different expressions, but it is the manner the Almighty dealt with the nations who received messages from messengers. Now when I say messenger, I'm translating a Rasul, whose plural is Rusul. From the Quran we learn that there have been men whom the Almighty had selected for the purpose of delivering His message to the mankind. They were called Nabi, whose plural is Anbiya. From amongst the Anbiya, there were a few who were given the status of Rasul. These were the Anbiya. The Rasul were the Anbiya who, when they would visit a nation with God's message, they would come with a clear mandate that accept this message and succeed not only in the hereafter but in this worldly life as well. Reject this message and you're not just doomed in the next life, you're doomed here as well. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not just the last Nabi, he was the last Rasul as well. Therefore, like the nations of Nuh, Hud, Saleh, Shuaib, Lut and Musa alayhi salam were dealt with, the Quran clarifies that the people of Mecca, the leaders of Quraysh and some others who rejected the messenger of God were likewise punished the way the earlier people were punished. And this is exactly what the Quran says. Akuffarukum khairum min ulaikum. Are your kuffar any better than the earlier ones? Am lahum bara'atun fi zubur. Or is it that they have got immunity in scriptures for them, that they are going to be spared? Not at all. So what happened? What happened was that after the Hijrah migration, the Quran tells us that whenever a messenger is forced to leave the town where he is propagating God's message, the nation becomes eligible for God's punishment. And that's exactly what Surah Bani Israel says. 2 years later, the first installment of God's punishment was inflicted upon the leaders of Quraysh, wherein in Battle of Badr, 70 leaders were killed. I keep saying that this battle is the only battle in the history of battles where all generals were killed and no ordinary soldier was killed. All of them were spared because this was God's punishment, and this is exactly what Surah Anfal says. Falam taqtuluhum, believers, you didn't kill them. Walakin Allah qatalahum. Instead it was Allah who killed them. In Surah Tawbah, verse 14, the Almighty says, Yu'azzibhumullahu bi'aydikum. God is going to punish them through your hands. What I'm trying to say is that all the killings and punishments that happened during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ were actually the description, the practical details of this law. It has got nothing to do with the universal general principle of the Quran, which, by the way, says most clearly that you cannot kill anyone. You see, the Quran doesn't contradict itself. The Quran, that is why, clarifies that the jihad that was undertaken by the Prophet, may Allah's mercy be on him, and subsequently by his companions, it was a punishment of the Almighty which was inflicted upon those who rejected a messenger of God. And that's how you have the entire Quran presenting its case absolutely consistently. There is an expression, a term, itmamul hujjah, which is what actually decides that the argument is completed, the message is presented so convincingly that there remains no room for doubt in the minds of others. And that declaration, understanding, clarification can only be had through God's wahi. There are only two reasons why you can kill another human. One, somebody has killed somebody else, and therefore after going through the process of investigation, there can be capital punishment given to that person, provided if the family doesn't agree to get blood money ransom. The other possibility is that somebody, an individual or a group of people, they indulge in what the Quran says, fasad fil ard, mischief on earth, which again, if translated into practical examples, is either killing people, not just one murder, but serial killing. A person is a killer, or not committing theft, robbery. There are individuals who made it a profession, or not simple adultery, but rape or making this business. So these are the two exceptions which the Quran mentions. If somebody commits these crimes, that person is eligible to be killed. Apart from these two, if somebody kills another human, it is as if he has killed the entire humanity. Jihad in the Quran, as it is mentioned, belongs to two categories. One was meant to implement the Almighty's decision of punishing those who reject the message of the messengers. The other for taking care of fasad fil ard. If there is fitna, which according to the description of the Quran is you are causing people to be harmed simply because of their faith. Religious persecution. If it's happening anywhere, then a Muslim ruler can declare jihad and his people would follow him, provided if they have a minimum requisite military strength. But here again, the Quran is absolutely consistent, because in that principal statement the Quran mentioned in Surah Al-Ma'idah, there are only two exceptions. Man qatala nafsan bighayri nafsin aw fasadin fil ard. It has either got to be a killer or somebody who is causing mischief on earth. The Quran does not allow you to kill. Sir, the Quran does not even allow you to kill an animal without mentioning God's name. If you will kill it, it's not going to be halal for you. So killing an individual is a huge crime. You see, the sad thing is that many of these people were completely ignorant of what the true message of Islam and what the true example of the Prophet is. They have been given to learn about a few incidents which have got to do with the law of Risala, which is actually not what the Prophet did himself. He was asked, allow me to say, he was forced by God to do that. You know, the Quran says, for example, Ya ayyuhan nabi, jahidil kuffara wal munafiqeen waghluz alayhim. O Prophet, you do jihad and fight against these kuffar and hypocrites and be strong against them. Why? Because he was not. He was polite, he was kind, he was forgiving. But then there came a time which was kind of deadline beyond which they were not eligible to his softness and kindness anymore, because the Almighty's punishment was to be inflicted upon them. So unfortunately, those incidents are highlighted, and unfortunately Muslims are not explaining that these have got nothing to do with the normal, common, real behavior of the Prophet. It has got to do with a law that has to do with divine punishment. That's what we must clarify to the entire humanity, and we should clear the great, glorious name of the Prophet from all these allegations, which unfortunately are part of the understanding of some people, who then go on to do things which then, cause us to be pained, and we react to them. And when God messengers come, Ja al-haq wa zahaq al-batil. Truth dominates and batil disappears. In many cases, because batil was dominant, it was destroyed by punishments, natural calamities in one form or the other. In the case of the last prophet, the batil was restricted, confined, and it was eliminated, and haq dominated. So that's what happened.